Hi, I'm Rusiru Fernando and my final year project is ImmunoPass, a decentralized blockchain-based multi-validator of digital vaccination record keeping and verification system. As to talk about the problem background, we know how crucial it is to record healthcare data person and how helpful it will become in treating patients. In my project, I will be discussing a subset of healthcare data, which is vaccination or immunization data of a person. In the modern world, most of the vaccination data are set apart from the other general health data of a person and is mostly not recorded digitally in many countries. But this vaccination data is crucial, for example, in the current COVID-19 pandemic. There are some countries that allow only certain types of vaccines to be taken for any person who wants to come to their country, or even in many countries to visit public places, vaccination is required. And as for another example, most of the African countries require the yellow fever vaccination, as these countries have a risk of yellow fever. People will have different personal opinions in getting a vaccine and would try to cheat with fraudulent or manipulated vaccination certifications. Many applications exist in the current day, more emerging with the ongoing pandemic of COVID-19. Vaccination certifications are issued as well as applications for holding vaccination data is developed. Most of these certifications or data in the apps are based on the hard copied versions of vaccination cards. Therefore, the validity of this data is unknown. And on the other hand, country records any vaccination details of people. The ownership of the data is with the relevant authority, not with the actual person. So this data could be manipulated and the privacy of the person could be breached as well, as the accuracy and the integrity of data cannot be determined. On the patient's hand, they have the ability of contacting a healthcare official or a person in charge of such system and bribe them into changing vaccination records to their advantage. The lack of proper authorized validity and a verification system approach is the identified research gap. As for the proposed solution, in order to avoid the above mentioned issues and gaps, an incentive approach of authorized multi-validator model is implemented while retaining the ownership of the vaccination records with the person itself. In addition to it, having this on a blockchain makes the data immutable and traced if inappropriate behaviors are occurred. As shown in the concept map, after the literature review, many areas were identified, many technologies were identified, and gaps and what they essentially cover are recorded in the concept map. So as for the technology, there are machine learning ways and blockchain and normal client server application approaches in developing this web application. So I have used a public blockchain so that any person can view and validate vaccination records online. As well, research gaps that were identified were the data ownership, data privacy, accuracy and integrity of data, data accessibility, contact tracing, and vaccine tracing. On my research, I will be covering about the data ownership, the accuracy and integrity of data, and the data accessibility parts. As for the tools, I have discovered interplanetary file systems, Solana blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, Stellar blockchain, and Ripple blockchains. I have used to go with the Solana blockchain as it is of low cost and higher transaction speeds, which will be much an efficient way of invalidating and verifying vaccination records in the system. And as per the domains in healthcare, out of dental, vaccination, and general health and surgeries domains, I have selected to go with vaccination domain to implement this verification model, validation and verification model. As for the evaluation, I will be considering the efficiency, the cost, and the validity of data within the blockchain. Let's move into the demo of the application. I have implemented my core functionalities upon the Solana blockchain, and a Solana program was written in the language of Rust. Going through the core functionalities, I will be first discussing about the models that will be used to save the vaccination and validate the vaccinations. So, the first, I will be discussing about the vaccination record struct. The structure of the vaccination record will have a creation date, the vaccine, any notes, the age of the person by the time they get their vaccine, the weight by the time they are getting their vaccine, the dosage of the vaccine, the batch number of the vaccine in order to trace it in any instance needed, and the doctor that will be doing the vaccination of that person, the vaccination camp, the vaccination that will be done, and the actual public key of the person who is getting the vaccination will be stored, as well as the status. So these three people will be the main validators of this vaccination record. Apart from these three, more doctors or more vaccination camps can validate upon these three as well. So as for the validation record, there will be a record type. In this system, the main record type would be the vaccination record. Apart from the vaccination record, a patient also could be validated within the system. And this will hold the public key of that item that gets verified. And the validator type, it will tell the role of the person who is doing the validation. It could be either the passport holder, the vaccination camp, or the doctor, as of now. And the validator public key will hold the public key of the person who is validating the relevant record. The status of the validation will also be stored, which is a valid, invalid, or a pending, an unknown status. Any notes, which is an optional field, can be added. The creation date of the validation, the date the validation has been done, will be also noted down. So one of the main evaluation is maintaining the cost of the maintain the cost of creating vaccination records. So the cost depends on the amount of space the relevant data structure holds to store a vaccination or do a validation. So the relevant space constraints and rules are defined here in bytes, so that it will take the minimum space required, and therefore the cost for creating the gas fee for creating a vaccination record or a validation record can be easily determined and reduced and kept to a minimum. Next, we can go to the context of creating a vaccination record. The vaccination record will be a type of account vaccination record, and the author will be the person who will be creating this vaccination record, and he will be paying for the gas fees for this record creation. Same goes for the validation, the person who is doing the validation will be paid for validity for the gas fees for the validity of the vaccination record. So this paying incentive approach, they would not pay for a fake validation within the system in this approach. If we go into the functionality, we can go through the function of creating a validation record. Creating a vaccination record. So a new vaccination record account will get created, and the created date time would be calculated and stored. The vaccine and the notes and any aged in the means of timestamp will be stored. The weight, the dosage, batch number, doctor, the vaccination camp, and passport holder. The doctor, the vaccination camp, and the passport holder, these three will be the main validators in this vaccination record. In addition to these three, there could be others as well, as the system supports limitless validation. In the process of creating a validation record, we can identify that there are three types of validators: the doctor, the vaccination camp, and the passport holder. And there are two record types: vaccination and the patient. So here, all the validations upon the data will be done. Length checks whether the desired the the actual assigned person is validating these records or not, and checks for the crucial information of a validation record. And a new validation record will be created upon the created vaccination record. Any person can fetch these vaccination record by their private public keys and verify their validity. We can check the validity of vaccinations via this by making sure that all the parties have validated it properly as valid. We can set the vaccination record status to valid, or if a single of the crucial three parties have invalidated a vaccination, we can set the vaccination status as invalid, or else we can set it as pending vaccination. These are the core functionality of the system: the validation and the verification of the vaccination records. There are other functions apart from these which are not core but which are crucial for the functioning of the system, such as creating the passport holders, creating vaccination camps, and creating doctors. For each of these functions defined in the program, I have written test cases to test the data within a local testnet blockchain. Each of the functions will be checked for their valid arguments are passed and when invalid arguments are passed. At the moment, there's no way of checking whether these functionalities are working. Rather, I would be running the tests to show that the functions are working as expected. As you can see, all the test cases are passing here. So, which includes creating vaccination records, creating validation records, fetching all validation records, validating vaccination records, and verifying. Next, I will be talking about the current progress and the future plan. So, as for now, I have done with the co-implementation, the backend of the application, and deployed the minimum core that is needed for this research project, and deployed it and written all test cases for all the functionalities for the in the backend. So, as of a future plan, I will be needing to improve the validations and bug fixes in the backend, and create an interactive front end for users to interact with the system. And finally, I will be needing to do testing and evaluation on that to check the costs and the efficiency and the performance of the application. And that will be the end of presentation.